Hey everyone, my name is Devin Moreno and I'm an investor in Baltimore City. Currently, I own 15 properties as of recording this video. This whole channel is a journey vlog of me basically showing how I went from 3.5 years ago not knowing anything to where I'm at now and of course where I'm going to be in the future. And today I want to talk to you about something that was a pitfall that I ran into very frequently and that I'm sure many of you will probably run into as well. And that is tenant showings and the fact that you'll be in an empty house doing tenant showings and no one shows up, like an 80% cancellation rate. And you're like, what the heck is even happening? And so I want to go into my experience with that because I ran into the exact same thing here in this city. And you're going to notice it doesn't happen as much out in the county areas or in certain types of neighborhoods. So I'm going to go into that, speculate on why, and then we're going to also go into how I schedule my tenants because I actually schedule about 100 showings per hour. I'm not even kidding, 100 showings per hour because I know that only about 5 or 10 are going to actually show up, which sounds kind of nuts, but I'm going to go into how it is I find 100 tenants for my house to begin with. So let's go ahead and get into all that now. So the first thing you need to know is that in a lot of certain neighborhoods in Baltimore, and most specifically the ones that are in the lower than medium income average neighborhoods, you're going to have a lot less people show up than in the higher end areas. So some of the reasons on that why is because, one, the public transit in Baltimore is terrible. It's actually really bad for just a major city. I know in the U.S. in general, it's pretty bad in general, but in Baltimore, it's particularly bad. Nothing is really that reliable. So oftentimes getting to your showing can be sort of a pain in the butt. Also note that the lower income neighborhoods in Baltimore are extremely poor, which means that their income fluctuates very fast. When you schedule something on Tuesday and then for something on Thursday, like a showing on Thursday, anything could happen in that time period, and it could be just something that's only like 20 or 40 bucks, and it could totally impact their day where now they have to work or now they have to do something else or whatnot. So it can throw them off quite a bit. Something that might be minor to a person who is not used to these neighborhoods will really impact them. So just be aware of that. Now, of course, many people might say, watching this right now, they're going to say, oh, well, these people are just lazy or whatever. I think that's true of any neighborhood, to be honest. Even in the higher end neighborhoods, my cancellation rate never goes above 50%. So a lot of my rooming houses, which I do have in higher end neighborhoods where the housing values are well into the half millions, essentially there I only schedule maybe 10 people because I know 5 will show up, stuff like that. But it's still, you run into a lot of the same problems. A lot of it, though, is going to deal with that. Also, some of it could be in the way that I do my showings. So I just mentioned that I do 100 people in a given hour. Now, it's because the cancellation rate's so high, but as you can imagine, I don't have a lot of time to answer all the different questions of these tenants. So basically, I make sure that all the information is in my description, and even despite that, they won't read it. Unfortunately, this is going to be a very frequent problem that they're asking questions that are already in there, and you're just responding back and forth between these tenants whom don't realize that you have 100 other people messaging you very, very quickly. So a lot of times I just say, you know what, I'll answer all your questions at the showing. Just come and show up. And it's because I know that even if I answer their questions, a good majority of them are not going to show up anyway, so it's not really worth my time to do so. But just make sure to have all of your information in the ad. Know your fair housing laws. Absolutely know what to restrict. So what to not say, actually, is what to say. So let's go into maybe some of the parameters that I set. What are some of the restrictions that I have for neighborhoods in Baltimore City? So the first one a lot of people are going to wonder about is credit score. What are the kind of credit scores I look for? Well, to be honest, in a lot of the neighborhoods in Baltimore City, and I say a lot because Baltimore has many more low-income neighborhoods than high-income neighborhoods. So, in a lot of these neighborhoods, essentially, finding you could say you want a 700 credit score and your house is going to be empty forever. You realistically are looking at probably 600 is probably your median average, I'd say, and with no hard data saying that, but I generally will have to say like maybe 550 credit score. So you're going to have to stop looking at the score and start looking at the report. You're going to have to realize why they're in that situation in the first place. A lot of people have situations that could have been easily avoided, but they don't know because they haven't been taught anything about the credit system. In fact, a lot of them don't even know how it works or anything like that, and so they don't realize how to build credit or even what's even impacting them. Also, many of them don't even have the resources to understand when something is impacting their score, and they could, they have to dispute it, let's say, but there's no resources to really tell you how to do that. So keep in mind that the credit reports are going to be really skewed. Another little tip, I don't go off pay stubs, I go off bank statements. A lot of times, people in Baltimore, well, number one, in these areas, there's a lot of fake pay stub makers. It's actually a thing you can find pretty easily all over Facebook. So they'll make a fake pay stub, kind of throw it at you. And what I would do is also get bank statements. And I'll look for generally a few things on bank statements. Number one is you want to ask them how they pay their rent to their current landlord. And you ask, is it in cash? Is it in like Venmo? Or how do you do that? Is it a check? And you basically don't give them the reason why. They'll tell you how. And that should correlate to their bank statement. You should see those withdrawals on their bank statement. Now, what I often find is that almost never is the case. Well, not almost never, but like a lot of times isn't. And it's usually because a lot of these tenants pay in cash and do massive cash withdrawals and say they're paying their landlord out of that pot. This is where I may contact previous or current landlords, make sure first of the owner of the house, and then see how it is they say they pay the rent. And don't even say it. Don't say, oh, do they pay in cash? You just simply ask that landlord, how does the tenant pay rent? And then you can corroborate the story. But a lot of times, that's how you're going to have to deal with things. The pay stubs, sometimes they won't have them at all. A lot of them just kind of operate through like under the table payments or something like that. So just keep that in mind. Bank statements are another thing that, although, yes, nice to have. And it also, second thing about the bank statements, it kind of allows you to see sort of their spending habits, how much they actually have. Spoiler alert, most of them are paycheck to paycheck, of course, but most Americans are paycheck to paycheck. Even in higher income neighborhoods, a lot of them are paycheck to paycheck. And if you're into finances, you should not be surprised by that fact that 70% of Americans are broke, and that's mostly due to money mismanagement. But essentially, in their case, they're going to have money mismanagement issues, but that's not really what you're looking for. You're just looking at what they're spending their money on. In general, it's going to be your average stuff, going to CVS, grocery store, whatever. So those are some of the things I'll look for in that. If they don't have bank statements, then I'll look at, like, let's say that maybe they have Cash App accounts or PayPal accounts or something where they are constantly moving their money and transferring to. If they work in all cash and nothing's verifiable, then I will say to you that I would be very hesitant to put that person in my house. And the reason why is because Baltimore City is very, very punishing of you putting the wrong tenant in your house. If you have a heart or too much and trust too much, you will get burned as they hold your house hostage for a long time. So just keep in mind of that because the laws are so strictly in the tenant's favor in the city, that means that you'd rather have an empty house than put the wrong person in. So just be very aware of that. I usually do want someone with some sort of record that I can track. So now with that out of the way, how do we get all of these people to even show up to the house in the first place? So the main thing I use is Facebook. I often find that Zillow works, sure, but Facebook, slams the competition. Absolutely outperforms. I'd say I'd probably get 10 times the amount of interest on my Facebook posts than do anything else. Now, there's some advantages and disadvantages of using your Facebook posts in order to do this. Number one, we're talking about Facebook Marketplace, but you have to use your own personal profile to do this. So the bigger you grow, the harder this is to actually pull off because you have to continue to use your own personal profile. But number two, they can look into you just as much as you can look into them. Yeah, I can look at their Facebook profile and kind of see what they're about, which I love about the thing, but just make sure to set your own profile in private before your tenants start finding out all of your information about you as well. They will get curious just as you will about them. So obviously some of my tenants know me, but to be honest, I have a YouTube channel talking about Baltimore City landlording. So my tenants have already found me on YouTube, actually. Actually, some of them already commented on that. So not something I'm particularly worried about at this point, but for yourselves, you might have a little bit more concern. Other than that, I generally will use Zillow. Keep in mind that Zillow will charge you a lot after the first rental. So what I would say is just keep deleting or archiving your rentals. And, because it wants you to do it for your own personal house. But then, you can keep moving that around. The bigger you get, the less you can do that. Apartments.com, I find to be another really good one where you can post. I don't know off the top of my head about multiple postings, but you can just take advantage of that system. as another alternative. But once again, I often find Facebook Marketplace to just be absolutely king of this whole strategy. So as my final advice to you, I would recommend just blocking out 2 hours of time for these showings. I wouldn't really do too much more than that. You're going to find you're in the house forever doing all these showings. I will go into my application process. In fact, I have in previous videos, but I will do an update on that. But hopefully that answers some of your questions that you might have just on the initial getting them to the house sort of process, and at least that I've faced here in Baltimore City. So if you have any questions, please comment below, let me know, and I will talk to you all very soon.